All right, everyone. This meeting is being recorded on behalf of Microsoft and Wheelhouse IT. So if you do not consent to being recorded, please disconnect now. I'll turn it over to you now, Rory.
Hey guys, we thank you for joining us. This is a webinar in partnership with Wheelhouse IT and Microsoft. Wheelhouse IT, for those who are not familiar with our organization, we are South Florida's largest managed IT service provider, headquartered here in Fort Lauderdale with an office in New York and then one in Los Angeles as well. Ideally, at a 400,000 foot view, effectively, we come in as a Microsoft partner and kind of transform business technology and how you guys leverage the tools in your office and streamline your processes and kind of become your IT backbone at the end of the day. This is not necessarily a sales pitch about us. This is really a resource for you to leverage Microsoft Office 365 in Teams and kind of start a conversation within your office to see if this is the right tool for you guys. So with that said, I'll throw it over to David and kick it off from there. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to use the chat along the way.
Yep, thank you, Rory. So the discussion today, well, actually, I've just introduced myself. My name's Dave Branscombe. I'm a partner technical architect for the Modern Workplace group at Microsoft. I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And our discussion today is going to be about Microsoft 365 to kind of help you understand the value that it can add to your organization, and to kind of level set. When we use the term Microsoft 365, I want to make sure everybody understands what that includes, because I know that many people have heard Office 365, and maybe they feel like it's just a rebranding when we say Microsoft 365. But actually, what Microsoft 365 is Office 365. So it's all the apps that you get in Office 365, plus Windows 10 licensing, plus the enterprise and mobility or enterprise mobility and security SKUs. So think of it more as more than just a licensing plan. It's not even really just a bundle of products. What it is a group of solutions that allow you to leverage the interconnectivity and the intelligence that's built into Microsoft's entire worldwide network. And what that means is that their value is actually greater than the sum of the underlying applications and services. So with this technology, our customers can innovate, they can compete more effectively, and probably one of the most important aspects is that they're able to secure their environments as they proceed on their digital transformation journey. So I mentioned the term digital transformation, and this concept of digital transformation has really created an exponential rate of change for the world over the past several years. And it's created many opportunities for growth and innovation across industries. And when we think about how digital transformation has changed the ways that we work, there have been some great developments in terms of the amount of data that we have access to, the number of apps and services that we can use to get our jobs done, as well as on a personal level, things we can do to communicate with others and family members and so forth. But along with that, there are also challenges that this digitization has introduced that can at times prevent us from doing our best work. And the reason is that as technology and as innovation continues to accelerate around us, what we're finding in many cases is that our ability to be productive hasn't kept pace with this rate of change. Now, why is this true? What is it that prevents us from doing our best work, even with all this technology and all this data that's at our disposal? Well, Microsoft's done some research on this, and it shows the research has shown that information workers use an average of 36 different cloud services at work. So whether that's Facebook Messenger, Box, Dropbox, Google Suite, Cisco WebEx, whatever it might be, these different cloud services, they create many sources of distraction. Now, some of it's work, obviously, but there's also a a transition time between different apps that your mind has to adjust to using a different interface and a different application. And so what we see is that 3 minutes is the average time that workers spend on a single task before usually they're interrupted by something else. And it takes an average of about 25 minutes for them to return to the original task, get back into the same thinking, the flow of thought, and to become productive again. So that creates a big productivity barrier. In addition to these distractions, the growth of cloud app usage within organizations, including things like WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook and things like that, that's driven many customers, many organizations to act to both eliminate shadow IT and to consolidate vendors so that there aren't these different forms of distraction. Sometimes the critical lines of business that exist within a system or within an organization can be a source of lost productivity. And the reason we say that is that sometimes these systems aren't able to communicate properly with each other. They aren't able to communicate with the cloud services. And that fractured flow of information causes workers to spend more time doing what we consider low value work. So think about the amount of time or effort that's spent submitting expenses or opening a purchase order in contrast with the value that effort adds. It can sometimes be out of proportion to the value of that task. But then think about that on an organizational level. How much time is spent manually taking information from one system and entering it into another, taking it out of a spreadsheet and entering it into some kind of an online form or a database housing some line of business application. And in terms of enabling transformation, security and compliance, the security and compliance risk is the most important consideration because your customers' trust and your own IP is critical. You have to defend those things and make sure that they're protected appropriately. But we see customers making decisions based on security solutions that at times have what we would consider counterintuitive outcomes. So they implement restrictive policies, which then force employees to use non-compliant applications to get their job done. That's one problem. But then the other problem is that organizations will often implement a best of breed approach. And what we've seen very often is that in medium-sized businesses, they'll average about 70 different security products or vendors. And so that adds complexity and it prevents customers or organizations from having the ability to respond to incidents very quickly. So the underlying cause of these challenges is that the innovation in the digital transformation world has been focused on the development of these new applications, the development of these new services. And as a result, we use a lot of independent apps. And we have these, as I mentioned, critical line of business systems within our organizations that don't talk to each other. And we have these numerous security products that solve a single need or address a single need. So the resolution of these challenges is shifting the focus of transforming how we work from an application or a specific tool to a human-centric approach where technology serves the purpose of helping people accomplish their jobs without just multiplying the number of tools that they're using. And that's really the focus of Microsoft 365. It takes that human-centric approach to solving today's challenges, productivity, and it delivers this value on a global scale. It's more than just your favorite applications like Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and things like that. It's actually a productivity cloud. It's designed for businesses and brings together these best-in-class productivity applications helps develop them as online services. You have the ability to perform advanced device management. So whether you're using a Windows device or an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device, we have the ability to manage all that. And then we layer security onto that. And at the center of all this is artificial intelligence, which enables people to enhance their own capabilities, their own human skill sets and talents, and takes away some of that low value work that we were talking about, like entering time in a timesheet or um, processing purchase orders, things like that. So by putting people at the center of the work, the breadth and depth of this technology in Microsoft 365 is surfaced in very natural, very intuitive ways, and it helps people to be more productive. Now, if we break this down, there's three core scenarios that illustrate how this underlying technology comes to life in some valuable ways. So connected experiences is the one that we see here at the top, and this is the one that we're going to be talking about primarily through this discussion today. Connected experiences is what allows us to flexibly work and collaborate with colleagues, helps us to be more productive with intelligence. The other two, integrated workflow. This is where we transform our business processes, those line of business apps that we're talking about, and helps to accelerate the flow of information and potentially transform those line of business applications into cloud-based services. And then lastly, the intelligence security. So here we're harnessing the power of artificial intelligence to protect your assets in a compliant manner and to guard against the threats that are common today without hindering productivity. So let's zoom in on each of these specifically. So the connected experiences. This is where we're talking about Microsoft Teams. Teams, again, is what we use to combine chat, calling, content, meetings, applications in a single productivity experience. We've got Office mobile apps. This uses the power of AI so that you can be productive, as I mentioned, from anywhere with any device, right? We're not limited to just Windows devices, although we'd love if you use them, but if you're using an iPad or if you're using an Android phone or an Android tablet, it's fine. The Office mobile apps work great on those. You've got the innovation in the Windows 10 PCs, the new Edge browser. All these things bring productivity experiences to new and interesting areas. We'll touch just here on this integrated workflow. So again, Teams has the ability to integrate with many line of business applications like your Salesforce or Service Desk or other applications that you may be using in your business. Those can be surfaced in Teams and help prevent that sort of disjointed workflow that often occurs in today's organizations. You can use Microsoft Forms and Flow to automate different processes and accelerate the flow of information. Power Apps allows you to build applications that can create connections between people and systems. And it can do that without having to write code, right? It can be very low code, no code type of scenarios. And then different organization time management tools like To-Do, Planner, and Project help to make sure that you're keeping projects on track. And then the third one that we talked about was intelligence security. So here we're talking about things like conditional access, where you can control who accesses your corporate resources, maybe when they access it, where they can access it from, if they're accessing it inside the corporate network, or if they're working from home or on a mobile device, and on what device they can access it. Microsoft Threat Protection helps you defend your Windows and your Mac endpoints from sophisticated malware campaigns. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that we have a threat protection tool for Mac devices. And we help you maintain your regulatory posture by providing solutions that can be leveraged to achieve compliance. So so sometimes organizations will say, well, what's the problem with staying on premise? There is a risk in keeping all your applications and products in the on-premises world, because in effect, what you're doing is uh, preserving the headaches that come along with managing your hardware upgrades and other time intensive tasks. So with the Microsoft 365 Cloud, you can provide your users with the latest capabilities for productivity and mobility. So that's delivered automatically. You don't have to perform manual upgrades and new desktop refreshes and things like that. You can eliminate some of the on-premise upgrade efforts, upgrading your Exchange servers, your SharePoint servers. All that's done automatically in the cloud. Microsoft takes care of that, so you don't have to worry about that upgrade cycle. And in the meantime, if you're currently on premise, we have the ability to provide a hybrid connectivity between your on-premise and cloud services so that you can transition over time. Okay, so let's, one of the things that we want to talk about is this connected experience and dig a little bit deeper into that. So let's get into that. Let's focus on Teams. And again, what this does is combines the ability to do instant messaging, chat, telephone calls, meetings, application integration, and it can help provide your organization with a single productivity experience. So why do we need Teams? One of the things that we've noticed is that there are some changing demographics in the workplace. For example, diversity. So we're seeing for really the first time in history, 5 generations of people working together. So you've got people still of the baby boomer set that are still in the workforce, and then you've got the 20 somethings today. And they all have different preferred ways of working. Some people, I mean, just one simple way of looking at it is how do you prefer to be communicated with? Some people prefer being talked to on a physical handset, a physical phone that sits on your desk and that you answer, and it's got buttons on it. Some people prefer to use a mobile device. Some people prefer to be communicated with over chat. Some people prefer social media. So this creates sometimes disjointed communication paths for organizations. And so we need to make sure that that is possible for organizations, and Teams really helps facilitate that type of communication. We also see a lot of team-based and collaborative work. 80% of employee time is spent collaborating, and we see people being added to teams more and more frequently. So a single individual could be part of multiple teams within an organization, working on multiple different projects or efforts, and having those groupings of data in one single location is really critical for remaining productive. And then the last one here is the global nature of work. So teams are increasingly geo-distributed. At Microsoft, this is a very common occurrence where you might be on a team that's all around the world in different time zones. Employees want to work from home, and so that creates a distributed workforce. As the quote there, the second one from the IDC mentions, we expect 72.3% of employees to be working remotely by the end of next year. So this makes it more challenging to have face-to-face conversations. So we need to facilitate that interaction between employees, and Teams helps to do that. So the Teams interface looks like this. If you haven't seen it before, it's a chat-based workspace. And as I mentioned, you have your ability to manage your chat, your meetings, right? Your calls, files, and the teams themselves all in one location. And because it's built on Office 365, the security and compliance tools that are built in Office 365 will apply to Teams as well. So there's multiple different aspects of Teams that can help an organization become more productive. There's the communication aspect, this one-to-one as well as group chat scenario. So this helps to, as I mentioned, address that multiple types of communication within your workforce. So people that prefer to have phone calls, they can use a Microsoft Teams phone, they can use the Teams app on their cell phone, or they can use chat, Yammer, various different communication modalities. When it comes to collaboration, Teams is deeply integrated with Office. So when you create Office applications, or when you leverage Office applications in Teams, you can access them directly from within the Teams interface. You see here this Files tab. From here, and I'll show you this in a demo in just a few minutes, you can open up your PowerPoint, your Word, your Excel files right from within the Teams application. You don't have to leave Teams in order to build or edit your documentation. And then the ability to integrate other applications into Teams. If you go here to the store in Teams, this is where you have the ability to add third-party applications into your team channels so that you can access those applications from, again, inside the Teams interface. So a lot of different things are available in the Teams interface. Let's talk about just one of them. So calling. So one of the great features in Teams is the ability to make calls and host your audio and video conferences. So you have this calling button here on the left-hand side of the Teams interface, and you've got your standard things that you'd expect with a calling tool. You have the ability to look at your saved contacts and your favorites. You've got a history of your calling. You have the ability to listen to your voicemail. And then you have a dial pad down here. So you can dial numbers and make phone calls within your organization, but also out to the public telephone network, just like with an existing phone system. But the thing that's nice about this is that because this is directly integrated with your Office 365 applications, you get integration with those applications. So you can make calls directly from Word or PowerPoint or Excel using Teams calling capabilities. So if you're working on a document with somebody and you have a question about that document, right from within the document, you can initiate an instant message. You can start a meeting. You can send an email. You can make a phone call to your coworker. You never have to leave the Teams application to do this. Literally, on the team that I'm on at Microsoft, Teams has become the primary workspace for many of us. We can do practically everything that we need to within the Teams client. We rarely have to go outside of it into Outlook or open up a PowerPoint separate from the Teams interface. Now let's dig in a little bit into how we deliver this voice capability. So it's important to note that Teams can serve as your entire telephony system. In most small to medium-sized businesses, this is really all you would need. So these are the components that make up Teams telephony. There's the Teams client, what we call phone system, which is a cloud-based phone system. You have the audio conferencing, and then how you get to the PSTN. How do you get dial tone? Microsoft calling plans is one way, or direct routing is another. So let's talk about each one of those individually. So I mentioned phone system. So phone system is it's a PBX. essentially. It's designed to replace your traditional on-premise PBX. So you could be using, for example, Ring Central or 8x8 or something similar if you're maybe a smaller business. So Teams phone system, when you combine it with something like PSTN calling, is your entire phone system built in the cloud. It's modern, it's tightly integrated with Office 365. Your users are going to get the cloud voice capabilities that they need, so they can make and receive and manage their phone calls. They can forward calls, have delegates for their phone calls, and so on. And they can use their phones, their normal personally owned cell phones, to make these calls, whether they're at work, they're at home, they're on the road, wherever they are. They can make phone calls on their mobile devices, on their laptop, on their browsers even. So you can make phone calls using a web browser. So it's different in the sense that in the past, PBXs were on-premise, big monolithic pieces of hardware. It was a significant hardware investment. But when we talk about phone system through Teams, it gives you the ability to easily consolidate the management of your phone system using just your web browser. So your Office 365 portal is where you would manage phone system and perform most of the tasks necessary. So why is that valuable to you as an organization? Well, number one, it simplifies the management of your phone systems. It allows you to very quickly get upgrades to your phone system. New features, new functionality is automatically pushed out by Microsoft. And so you don't have to purchase additional hardware or upgraded software. All that's done automatically. And it reduces your reliance on that sort of hardware model that the phone vendors have grown accustomed to. It's all delivered in the cloud. And so you do have this easy access to the latest innovations. So that gives you the phone, right? That gives you a PBX, but you still have to figure out a way to connect to the PSTN. And so what we have is option one is what we call calling plans. So if you look at what a calling plan is, essentially what you're doing is you're asking Microsoft to make the connection from phone system, from Teams, to the carriers, to AT&T or Verizon or whoever it might be. So Microsoft handles that handoff between Teams and the carriers. So what's the cost savings that you can realize by using calling plans? So if you look at just a couple examples of some national calling plans, if you look at Verizon or Ring Central, roughly they'll charge you about $35 a month per user. Okay. On the other hand, if you use PSTN calling, one of these calling plans through Microsoft, it's only going to cost you $12 a month per user for domestic calling, or $24 a month for domestic plus international calling. So there's two different ways that you can get your calling, right? You can use local and long distance, or you can get local plus international calling. But if you compare those two pricing models, you look at the Ring Central pricing. If you figure $35 a month times, let's say 50 users in your organization, that's times 12 months, that's $21,000 a year, right? If you take the same 50 users and provide them with calling plans from Teams, you get $12 a user times 50 users times 12 months. That's $7,200 a year. So using the calling plans in Teams, you're saving just a little bit, or you're spending just a little bit over a third of what you would with Ring Central's pricing. So $21,000 a year with Ring Central, just a little bit over $7,000 a year with Teams calling plan. So the cost savings can be pretty significant in that type of scenario. So that's one way to get to the PSTN. You would allow Microsoft to make the connection to your carriers. The other way you could get to the PSTN is using what we call direct routing. So the idea with direct routing is that a user would be enabled in Teams, which we see over here on the left-hand side. They would have the phone system, which gives them a phone number and call queues and auto attendance and all that type of thing. But then the way that they would get to the PSTN is not through Microsoft directly. What would happen is they would leverage an on-premise piece of hardware called a session border controller. And then that session border controller would connect to a SIP trunk, which goes out to the Verizons, the AT&Ts, and all that. So this type of scenario is useful in situations where maybe you as an organization have already contracted your carrier services with AT&T or Verizon, and it might be a 5-year contract, and you can't break that contract. So you can leverage that connectivity with your carrier by using direct routing. So there's a couple different ways that can be performed. This also gives you the opportunity to have coexistence with an on-premise PBX. So if you have an on-premise PBX, like from Avaya or Cisco or whatever, the session border controller could be the intermediary between that on-premise PBX and your users that are on Teams. So that's one benefit of it. Also, if you have analog needs, if you have devices that require an analog connection to the phone system, the session border controllers can provide the means to connect to those as well. So 2 different ways that you can make a connection out to the PSTN. The other piece that we talked about is audio conferencing. And so audio conferencing is available in 72 different countries. You can get dial-in numbers in 90 different countries, 400 cities, dial-out support in 190 countries. Lots of different places in the world where audio conferencing is available. So this can be a real big cost savings in environments where they may be using Cisco WebEx or Citrix GoToMeeting. You can use this audio conferencing capability that's built into Teams and reduce your costs. So let's actually talk about that right now. So we want to talk about cost savings, because as we go through this transformation journey, you need solutions that do more than simply increase your productivity. If they're increasing productivity but tripling your cost, that's not really a valuable solution. You have to maximize your return on investment. So let's talk about how Microsoft 365 can help organizations like your own save money. And specifically, we'll look at how implementing Microsoft 365 can help procurement teams to support multiple purchasing initiatives and reduce your overall IT spend. So let's take an example here. As we think about empowering employees, we want to give them tools that everybody in the organization can use to unlock their creativity, their ingenuity. And because the Microsoft 365 offering is so broad and has so many applications and tools available, the research from Forrester that's referenced down here at the bottom, they've concluded that an organization can recognize a 123% return on investment when they move to Microsoft 365. That's pretty amazing. When we talk about teamwork, as different from simple collaboration, a lot of people can collaborate on something and really get nothing done. But when you have, genuine teamwork, people have a shared purpose. They have a sense of accountability. They want to make progress together, and there's an expectation of real outcomes that matter to the business. And so when we use teams, we can see an improvement in collaboration and information sharing on the order of about 4 hours a week. Now, when you multiply that across, even if you only look at 50 users, you talk about 200 hours of work can be saved. So that's 5 weeks of work on any given week, really. So that's very valuable. Because you're reducing the number of systems within an organization, we can see a 50% reduction in IT administration costs. And then one of the big ones here, obviously, is security events. So seeing a reduction in the number of end user impacting security events, whether it be ransomware or clicking on a phishing email or an accidental leak of data to an outside resource. Our tools can help you reduce those types of scenarios. Now, the numbers on this slide are pretty interesting. So they're taken directly from an organization called Nayland College, which is out of New Zealand. It's a school, and they were able to, using Microsoft 365, eliminate all but one of their on-premises servers. And because of this, they believe that they are going to be saving about $150,000 in hardware costs over the next 2 years. So that's pretty significant for an organization with less than 200 seats, right? That's what we're looking at here. Include in that things like savings from security breaches, cost savings through vendor displacement, e-discovery and legal review costs, and then reduced spending due to licensing reductions with Microsoft. And what they ended up with is $270,000 potential cost savings over the course of 3 years. So what they're planning to do, the folks at Nayland College, they're planning to redirect that saved money into what the business is there for, right? They want to build new classrooms or improve the classrooms, buy new computers, new wireless projectors. They want to enhance the overall student and teacher experience. So that's what helps make them more productive. It's nice that these cost savings came with reduced administration costs and things like that. But the real value is being able to do their job better. That's really what they wanted to do. And so a company like Wheelhouse IT can help you determine what your return on investment could be on a very personal level for your organization by going through the customer value calculator here at transform.microsoft.com. So I mentioned this vendor consolidation capability. And what this slide is doing is illustrating how consolidating some of these things into a single vendor can cost much less than choosing different vendors for each of these specific capabilities. Now, we aren't saying that every vendor that we list here will be eliminated completely from your environment, and that's not necessarily something that an organization should try to do. But if you leverage Microsoft 365 in the E5 SKU, right, many of the capabilities would be available to you that you might already be paying for with some of these other vendors, for example. So there are a lot of different standalone services that can address a wide range of your top business IT needs. It can be things like analytics. So, Tableau is a big analytics tool, meetings and calling, or like we mentioned with Cisco WebEx, or Google calling and Hangouts and things like that, Jabber. Compliance and security, a lot of different others. Now, whether your organization has been using a service for years or even just a few months, you might be asking yourself, why bother making the change, right? We're already used to this. Why should I bother changing? One of the biggest reasons is that Microsoft regularly introduces new services and new capabilities into the cloud. So without access to these innovations, customers who are using add-on services can quickly fall behind what the competitors are doing. So Microsoft adds something to the E5 SKU, and that's not available in the standalone vendors that you're using now. That might mean that in order to get this capability, you have to add another vendor to the mix. And that becomes an administration nightmare. It's a licensing challenge, and it could end up costing a lot more money. So let's take a look at what's on this screen to kind of visualize that that last point, the idea of driving down costs. So on the right, we see what it would potentially cost to purchase the same Microsoft 365 value by purchasing standalone services from other vendors. And we estimate this to be about $108 per user to get your analytics, your meetings and calling, your compliance, and your security elements from standalone vendors, which would fall into these categories. Whereas if you, on the left, if you're a Microsoft 365 E3 customer right now, upgrading or stepping up to the E5 SKU is just going to cost $25 per user. So there's an actual $83 per user savings. Now, $83 per user per month is what we're talking about. So even if you're in a very small organization, 50 to 100 users, that's a lot of money, and it adds up very, very quickly. So consider where the displacement of some of these standalone vendors could be achieved, and the cost savings that you could achieve by leveraging the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU. This is just an example of some of the potential areas where vendors could be replaced by products within the Microsoft 365 SKU. So Azure Active Directory, as an example, could replace Okta or SailPoint or SAP. Phone system could replace solutions like Cisco PBX or Spark or Avaya. You get into Teams, it could replace solutions like Slack or Google or Workplace by Facebook. So there's a lot of different areas where products that you're buying in a standalone form now could be purchased through a single vendor with the E5 SKU, and that would simplify your support channels, and it would help simplify your licensing, and all the products would be integrated with one another since they're all coming from Microsoft as well. This is what the actual plans include. So there's 3 plans that are listed here. The F1 SKU is what we typically refer to as the first line worker SKU. So these are applications that are typically delivered in a web-based form. So you get a lot of the same functionality that you would in the more advanced SKUs, but rather than getting a downloadable application, you have a web-based application for things like Teams and Outlook and Yammer and so forth. So that's the primary difference. This is primarily for people like on a factory floor, or people that are out in the field, doing work, and they only have access to maybe a tablet or a mobile phone. That's what the F1 SKU is. And the E3 gives a lot of more advanced capabilities, including things like Delve and your analytics, data loss prevention, And then once you get to the E5 SKU, you get the full range of capabilities, including the phone system that we talked about, Power BI, and all the other things that you see in the E5 or E3 SKU. If you kind of narrow down into some of the features that are available through the voice services, remember we talked about phone system and audio conferencing and calling plans. Here's the details more about how you can purchase those, what some of the capabilities are for phone system. This certainly isn't all of them, but these are the primary ones that the end user or end organizations are typically looking for. And then how to buy audio conferencing, how you can buy calling plan, and what the features are for each of those. So that brings me to the end of the slideshow. Now let me just very quickly show a screen here where you can see what the team's interface looks like. So this is just a sample team that we've got set up. But there's a lot of really interesting capabilities. I've only got about 10 minutes left, so I'm not going to go into a lot of deep capabilities, but this is roughly what it looks like. I've got some sample channels here. So this is what we call the channels, whereas the one with the colorful box is the team itself. But some of the things that we can do within a channel, for example, we can have conversations. Let me get one that's got something interesting. So I can create tabs up here that allow me to provide different types of information to my end users. In this case, I've got a survey that I've asked my the members of the team to fill out. So we want to go to the desert for the offsite, and then they submit it, and then that request gets or that response gets sent to one of the other teams or channels, so that the organizing committee can prepare. You can add videos to your team. In this case, this is a YouTube channel. So you can add a YouTube channel and specific videos to a team. And then here I've created a tab specifically for this document. So the document itself is stored here in files, right? This is the same document, but because I consider it important and I want people to be able to access it very quickly, what I can do is just say, make this a tab. And so when I do that, it creates it as a tab over here. And notice that I can edit the document right here within Teams, or if I have Word, I can open it in the desktop app, or I can open it within the browser. So that's what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying that you can create new Word, Excel, spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations right from within Teams. You don't have to go outside of Teams in order to create these. And you're creating the documentation inside the team that it's relevant for. Teams can also have conversations, so you can have conversations with your, GIFs and your cute little emojis and things like that. You can also initiate a meeting right from within the team. Let me get out of that. Kill that. And then over here, notice that, so I'm in a web browser and I can make phone calls from within this web browser. So I could make a phone call to, let me call my cell phone, 5686752. So from my web browser, I'm able to make a phone call. Oh, and it's going to try to use my microphone, so I'm not going to block that. Otherwise, it'll kill this call that I'm on. But it would allow me to make a phone call to my my personal cell phone from the web browser. So lots of really cool capabilities there. Trying to find some interesting things. So for example, you could create a Twitter feed. If you have a Twitter account within your company, you could create a feed specifically for Twitter so that your social media people could keep track of what's being discussed about your company within Twitter. You could manage your ServiceNow tickets. I don't have any integration set up right now, but you could integrate your ServiceNow help desk tools into a channel. Lots of different things you could do. Obviously, I'm running out of time, so what I'm going to do is switch over to the chat here and see if there are any questions I need to answer. Oh, okay. So that was just a request for the conference ID. So we have the question: when you make documents in Excel files, do they automatically get uploaded to the cloud? Yeah. So that's the thing. Like right now, I'm working on Teams in my web browser. If I create a Word document. And I create it. Right, so blah, blah. Now watch what's happening. See up here, did you see right in the middle, watch this this area here. So it says saved. As soon as I start editing, notice it says it's saving. So automatically, as I'm typing, it's saving this to SharePoint Online. And I'll show you how that's true. Every time I create a document, it's actually being saved in SharePoint. So let's click open in SharePoint, and you'll see the structure of how the team is actually set up. There's my test document. This is my SharePoint Online location. So all this stuff is being shared and stored in SharePoint directly from the browser. I see it gets saved, but how do I save to a specific project? So I'm in a specific team, which is what we would consider like a specific project. So let's say we're in the Mark8 project team. Or are you asking, how do I put a document that already exists into a project team? Is that what you're asking? Use Dropbox and we have projects folders. How does that save in SharePoint? So you mentioned Dropbox. That's interesting. So you could take your file out of Dropbox just like you would if you're going to be editing it in your own desktop, right? Save it to your desktop and move it to SharePoint. Just do upload, just like you would any other document that you have saved, right? Do that way. Or you could do this. You could say add cloud storage. Let me actually go back here for a moment. I want to show you something. So the reason I'm going back here is because, actually, that's not the one I wanted to be in. So here. So this is the Teams Admin Center. This is where you actually administer Teams. And what you can do is from the Teams Admin Center, you can say, forward settings. Here I want to say, I want people to be able to save in Dropbox, right? So I want Dropbox to be available in my teams. So if you have an organizational Dropbox or box or share file or Google Drive installation, then you can make that storage available here, right? So Dropbox is available right here. Now I can go in and log in as a user who has Dropbox credentials, which I think this user does. Oops, password, I suppose. I think I got the right login there. Let me make sure. And it's going to ask Microsoft Teams would like to access the files in your Dropbox. I'm going to allow that. And And now what I'm doing is looking at the files in my Dropbox folder. And I'm going to add that as a folder. And so right now, I can look at what's in my Dropbox from within Teams. Now, what's good about this especially is that this means that I can also put controls around this. So I can apply my compliance and security controls to what's in Dropbox. And I can apply those controls through Office 365. So I can encrypt documents. I can prevent them from leaking to other areas. And I can do that because the controls are being applied here. But by default, you're going to store in SharePoint. But you have the ability to also store it in these other locations if you've got a corporate installation of that. Okay, good. You understand. Right. Any other questions? Feel free to come off mute if you just want to ask the question. That's fine too. You know, we're bumping up against time, Rory, but okay. Lots of stuff that I didn't even get a chance to show you here. Maybe we can do another, I think the next event, we can do some more demos of how you could use Teams and leverage it within an organization. So I'll make sure to set aside plenty of time for that on our next webinar, Rory. Okay.
Absolutely. And speaking of our next webinar, our next one's coming up on the 8th, I believe, next Tuesday at 1 o'clock again. And that's actually focused on getting the most out of Microsoft Teams. So taking a deeper dive into that as you speak. And I'll make sure that everybody who is in this webinar gets an invite to that next one. If there's nothing else, I mean, us at Wheelhouse IT, David, we really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing how this comes to life. If anybody has questions, comments, or concerns about Microsoft Teams, how Wheelhouse IT can help you implement it into your business, we'd love to have that conversation. We'll send a recap email with some information about Teams to everybody shortly thereafter, and we look forward to seeing how you guys sort of transform your productivity within your office. So thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, for visiting.
No problem.